somebody who's all right. Here we go. Well, welcome everybody to this month's town hall meeting. This is the 1st of June, 2025. My name is Ken Parks, and we're joined by our president, Susan Allen, who's on the road at the moment. So I'll probably be acting as the host here today. It's good to see everybody. And we're going to talk about today some of the sessions that I attended last weekend at the National Genealogical Conference in Louisville, Kentucky. There were many sessions, several different tracks, and the nice thing about it these days is when you go to these or you attend them virtually, that they record all of those sessions. And so I'll be able to go back, I think, until the middle of July and catch the recordings for sessions that I couldn't make physically, and sometimes revisit some of the ones I did, because it's just good to hear some of those talking points again for them to sink in. Obviously, I can't share the actual handouts that were accompanying some of these sessions because those are protected by copyright from the speakers, and we can't share the videos because those are copyrighted as well. So what I'll do is I'll just pull out a few points from 4 of the different sessions that I attended that I think might be of interest to people. And on that resource page, which I sent out, I think yesterday, I put some of the links that they provided and a few things that I stumbled across as well that may relate to those subjects. That you can download or print out or use in any way you want. Also, when I post the recording of this month's meeting, for those who are watching it later online, I'll post that link to that resource page in the comments section there as well. So just to get started briefly, if you've got that handout or if you looked at it, there were 4 different sessions I pulled out that I thought might be of interest. The first is about FamilySearch 2025 New Tools and Discoveries. We'll also look at Foundations for British Isles Research. I don't know why I found that interesting and wanted to go to it, but there you are. Another one with what's new at Ancestry. Some of you use Ancestry, some don't, but there were some interesting developments that I thought that were worth sharing there. And finally, a session by Judy Russell, who we've discussed previously. She's known as the legal genealogist. She has a blog touching on all aspects of the law and how it relates to our genealogical research. And she's talking in this session about the courts of the Kentucky, the bluegrass state, but much of what she talks about obviously translates to other states, other locations, and even other countries, some of the underlying principles. So I thought that might be of interest. What I might ask is if you will mute yourself in case, the dog decides to start barking or somebody walks through. But I think the best way to go along on this is as we go, if you have questions or comments, unmute yourself and jump in. That way we won't hold everything until the end. If it seems like we may be running long and get bogged down, then we may move along and come back to it at the end of the thing. But I think it's best if something comes up that's pertinent and you've got a question or a comment, or if I say something that's blatantly wrong, especially when we're talking about research in the British Isles, there's some people here who might have a little more experience than I do and can call me out on it. So I'm certainly not an expert on any of these subjects. And I think that's the beauty of these town hall meetings, is it gives us a venue to come together as fellow researchers and learn and bring our experiences to the table and share them with others. So starting off with the FamilySearch New Tools and New Discoveries, we've talked about the full text search aspect of their online experience before, and we'll talk a little bit about it here. But basically what this presentation taught me is a little bit more about using the catalog in FamilySearch's online site. I must confess, and maybe a lot of you are more familiar with using the catalog than I was, I would tend to go to the site and simply use the search box. And I realized from this presentation that I may have been missing out on a good deal because not everything in the catalog is searchable. And so it pays to go to the catalog, put in your search terms there and see what's available for a particular location or something like that, and then drill down into it. And what that will show you is what resources are available. Let's say we'll do a search on Aberdeenshire, Scotland. There'll be records for church minutes, court records, any aspect that they have. And you can open up that particular one, see what's available, and then more detail into terms of whatever record sources they have, what format they are in. Certainly not everything in the possession of the FamilySearch or the library is available online. Some things, books, are in hard copy, and they may only be available in their library in Salt Lake City. And some certainly are never going to be available online because of copyright issues. Other record sources may be available on microfilm only still, although that's increasingly dwindling as they digitize more and more things. And there'll be a little icon, a little reel of microfilm by that source that you can click on, and it will tell you that's what that means. There's a little camera icon beside many things, which means there are images to search, and you can click on that. And those things that have been digitized can be read using either OCR, optical character recognition, if it's a printed book or something like that, or the handwriting recognition. Now, fortunately, all of those old handwritten documents, deeds and wills and such, can be read using artificial intelligence. And that's a game changer, certainly as far as I'm concerned. And in addition to that now, when we talked about full text search several months ago, it was very new, and it's still an experiment, technically. It's in beta. But initially, there were only a couple of types of record sources that were available in that. They are adding to that daily, and it's increasing. And within a year or so, I think the bulk of their digitized records will be available under that full text search. The beauty of that, of course, is that when you search and come up with a full text search, you not only get the image itself of the original document, you get a transcription, and those are improving daily because artificial intelligence has the ability to learn, and the more experience it has reading and translating these things, transcribing these things, the better that's getting. It will also, in many cases, give you a summary of the document. It pulls out the pertinent facts, what's about, some of the parties that are named. If their role in that document is specified, it will tell you that, so-and-so, wife, so-and-so, son. Very helpful. And of course, then you can download not only the image itself, you have options, you can also download the image with the transcription, and of course with the source citation. It also gives you the option to attach that record to a family tree and FamilySearch if you have one there. So there are lots of options there. Also, in the case of if it's a book and it's held in the library in Salt Lake City, they will tell you below there's a link that you can click on. There's something called WorldCat, which I'm sure you may be familiar with, the World Catalog. You click on that and it will tell you if there are other libraries or repositories that have a copy of that book. And there may be one that's nearer to you. if you're not able to get to Salt Lake City. And of course, some of those libraries actually may make those books available for interlibrary loan, which would make it even easier for you to access that. So there's a load of information by going into the catalog itself and drilling down and getting all the information you can about a particular source and how to access it. I hesitate to do this because I'm not very good at it, but I'm going to try sharing the screen and give you an example of something. Let's see, share. Bear with me. I'm not a professional. Okay. Okay. Let's see if can everyone see this?
I see that, but not any, screen or presentation. Just that you screen. There it is. You're here.
Okay.
Yeah.
It took a little while to click in. Now this, for instance, I did a search on Aberdeenshire, Scotland, went into some of the options, found this Records of the Sheriff Court of Aberdeenshire, edited by David Littlejohn. And of course, it tells you it's 3 volumes, physical volumes, photocopy of original. Then if it's available, and here you see, click here to view volume 1, 2, 3. Again, if it weren't and you wanted to view the catalog record in WorldCat for possible locations, and gives you more information where it's available in hard copy on the library, all of this information. Going to that actual, we're going to go to volume 2, I think. And here you'll see a copy. I did a search for Parke. I scrolled down through all the hits. Now, a lot of them, of course, unfortunately, are simply references to some place with a park in the name, a place name. But here's a hit for, I think this is the Agnes, yeah, the Agnes Park. Let me increase this so we can see it. Actually, I don't have the right page here. Oh, I had that opened. Here it is. Where is it? Well, I'm not sure why it's not showing up.
Is it underneath it says view 325? Is that page 325 or something?
It said what?
Underneath the thing in the right-hand column, it says that view 325 is on 111. Is that the page?
Yeah, I think that's the one for the one previous. But I don't know why the image isn't showing up. For some reason it's not loading. I had it up. Oh, well. Well, just from the little excerpt over on the side, I will tell you that it's a listing about an Agnes Parke who is widow of an Alexander Fraser. And from what I can interpret some of the language there, it appears it was, again, reserving her life rent right to the property. In other words, she was allowed to live there for the rest of her lifetime. She did not have control of the property, could not sell it or dispose of it, but she had the right to live there. And it appears that her husband died in April of 1605. The date of this entry, I think, was in March of 1617. So that gives us a little bit of information. We're trying to find out about early parks. We don't know if they're related to our line of Aberdeenshire parks or George's, which has turned out to be a separate genetic line. So we know there are at least two genetically distinct park lines in Aberdeenshire, going back to the 16 and 1700s. But it's some information that we can extract and record and try to follow up on. Obviously, if we could find a marriage record that far back, but chances are that marriage record is possibly in the very late 1500s. But it tells us that, an Agnes Park married an Alexander Fraser, and you could follow possibly their descendants down and find more information, that sort of thing. Well, I'm sorry, I apologize for why this is not working. I had it, I thought, up, but let me stop the sharing for the moment. But that's just one example of going into the catalog, doing a search on a location, and finding something that, that's probably not available on Ancestry or even FamilySearch. And it's just another way to access the kind of records that you may not know exist. Of course, we talked about, and the other aspect of FamilySearch is the research wiki, and there
Ken,
yeah.
sorry, I just have one question.
Sure.
So do you know how much of the FamilySearch catalog is not searchable? Do we have any idea of how many additional records there are that aren't searchable in the general sense that we'd need to go in and maybe do something, search location, things like that?
No. The quick answer is no, I don't. They might be able to tell you. When you're searching, when you're searching the catalog, you have the option to put in search terms for any of their holdings. You also have the option for only their online holdings. So that's a way to sort of separate out if you're only at that moment interested in seeing things that you can access from home. But at some point in your research, it's useful to take a look and see what's there that is not online, because it might be something that you think is worth pursuing. And then you can explore those options of how to access it, either by physically going there or through going to a family search center near you, or an interlibrary loan of microfilm or things. Or if something that you really, really want to access, I think they have an option, the FamilySearch people there in Salt Lake City have the option of hiring a genealogist who could go in and search those records for you. Obviously, there would be an expense for that, but compared to the expense of flying to Salt Lake City and staying in a hotel and meals and everything, it might be worth your while. But again, the short answer is no. I don't know how much is available.
No, I think that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. One of the other aspects that she talked about is, and I wasn't aware of this, is going in and turning on what they call 3-star hints. Apparently the default when you're doing a search, and they give you hints on things, and I guess those turn up on trees and things, are 4 and 5-star hints. They recommend only turning on this 3-star hints option if you're a more experienced researcher. But there in the handout, it tells you how to go into your account and turn that on. And as they explain, those hints are often records of our ancestors, but there may be a misspelling or a little bit of information that disqualifies it from being a 4 or 5-star match. But if you turn it on, the feeling is if you're an experienced researcher, at least it gives you the option to view that and make that determination for yourself, whether you think that that hint is relevant or not. So I've already gone in and turned that on. You can turn it on or off at any time, but once it's on, I would see no reason not to use it. So that's something, and of course, FamilySearch is free and doesn't cost anything. So you might explore that 3-star hint option. Another aspect, and we'll talk about this a little bit with Ancestry as well. Family Tree Maker, FamilySearch, you know, obviously has that worldwide tree, they call it, or something like that. And we're all kind of familiar with that. Anyone can contribute to it. The information is often not sourced, and as we found, is very often is not correct. We've all had experience of seeing something that we absolutely know is not right. You can go in and change it, but I suppose somebody could come along and change it back. So I've never had a great deal of faith in those online family trees. It's interesting to look and see what's there and use it as a guide for further research. But what they have come up with recently is something called the CET, and that's in your resource guide. And it stands for a control edit tree, and that's a new option. And you actually have to go in and they're limiting it actually because it's still an experiment. So you have to turn that experiment on, and you can create your own private editable tree on FamilySearch. You can, I think, allow certain other people to edit it or collaborate on it, but it's not out there for everyone to see and to change at will. So that's a more acceptable option for having an online tree there. And of course, that also will have access to the hints that may pop up from FamilySearch resources. The other aspect of it is, and I didn't realize this, is that if you have a genealogy software program, Family Tree Maker, which is what I use, and I haven't Googled to see if any other genealogy software programs participate in this, but with Family Tree Maker, you can upload your tree to this FamilySearch. You can download your FamilySearch tree to Family Tree Maker. You can sync them, you can merge them, you'll get hints to it, and you can do that as well to Ancestry, which I didn't realize. So that's something else to explore. I have a very small tree on Ancestry, mostly for DNA purposes, but now that I know I could upload my GEDCOM, it certainly it takes a lot of the effort out of it that discourages you from doing something like that, to have to manually enter in all of that information. So that's something to look at as well.
Ken?
Yeah.
You started to mention the wiki, the FamilySearch wiki,
Mhm.
and you didn't go on with that.
Oh.
One of the things you need to remember about FamilySearch is you go on the wiki, you find out what records are available for the counties or the towns or the state that you're searching. And if it's not in the wiki, they don't have it. So you just be wasting your time to search for something that they don't have. For example, I have a lot of research in Atchison County, Missouri. They have nothing for Atchison County, Missouri. So I don't even bother to go there and look anymore because they have nothing.
You mean FamilySearch doesn't?
FamilySearch has nothing.
In their catalog, yeah.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about the wikis is there are references to where records are held other than FamilySearch.
Yeah, but if you go to the wiki and you find that FamilySearch doesn't have them, there's no sense in spending time there looking for
the catalog, yeah.
Yeah.
But it will help you find where to go and search. So yeah, that's a good thing to point out. Thank you. Yeah. So any other comments or questions about the FamilySearch and that aspect of it? If not, we can move on to the next one, which was Foundations for British Isles Research. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Paul Milner over there in the UK. He was actually born in Whitehaven, up in Cumbria, just outside of the Lake District National Park. It's a coastal town there, not that far from Carlisle, where Bill Parke, who isn't here with us today, his family moved down to. Oh, there you are. You sneaked in on me. Thanks. Good to see you. And it's close to Kendall and Grange over Sands, where another park line that relates to our group OOA is from. Interesting background. He went to a school for mining engineering down in Cornwall. And then at some point around 1978 came to the US for advanced degree work, ends up with, I think he has a Master of Divinity. And his research, he's sort of an expert in ecclesiastical records and how they relate to genealogy. And he's very knowledgeable about British Isle research. Now, you who live over there might confirm or help me out with this. I thought his accent coming from up there was just vaguely reminiscent of a Scottish accent, not strong, but I heard it sounded like sort of an influence of a Scottish accent. And maybe that's typical of people from that up there, that part. I don't know, but I thought it was interesting. And the fact that he's been over here in the States for so long, we had no trouble understanding him to our American ears. Again, these are all hour sessions. I told him afterwards I could easily have done another hour. But the nice thing to know is he, like a lot of these speakers, and I put some of that information on the handout, I think, he's done at least 25 webinars on the Family Tree webinars site, which we've talked about before. And Judy Russell's represented there, and some of these other people. Again, I think it's the best bargain around in terms of genealogy research. There are thousands of webinars on every aspect you can think of for a $49 US yearly subscription. It's a treasure trove. And he's got webinars on there on just all different aspects of British Isles research, Scotland, Wales, England, Ireland, all different aspects. So even though we can't share his specific content here, you can find a lot of him on the web. He began with an overview of the British Isles, sort of like what we did a month or two ago when we were talking about our British Isles research, just describing the geographical, what makes up the British Isles, and then went into the political divisions of Great Britain, United Kingdom, Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the Crown dependencies, and so forth and so on. So I felt very smart that I already knew that. but shortly after that, he left me in the dust. So he gave definitions of some of the different terms, the shire, county, Welsh counties, county subdivisions, manors, and something called, tell me, Gay, have you ever heard of a conurbation or conurbation? You're muted. You're muted.
I belong to the Greater Manchester conurbation.
Okay.
Which has got 9 or 10 boroughs surrounding Manchester. Yeah. We're in a bigger conurbation. Okay.
And for those of you who don't know, as I didn't, it refers to when a number of small towns or villages or entities grow and then they eventually merge. Greater London is an example, and Gay's. It's sort of like when over here, the suburbs are absorbed by, the city, surrounding suburbs. So that was interesting. And then, of course, in his handout, he went on to talk about the various repositories that are available, including archives like the National Records of Scotland, National Registers of Archives for Scotland, a new site called Your Scottish Archives, which I just took a quick look at the other day. Various libraries, National Library of Scotland and Ireland and so forth and so on. Yeah, Jean, okay.
The National Library of Scotland does regular little Zoom sessions explaining. They've got a free session on the 17th of June for the Highlands and Islands family history. Are we that high up? I don't know whether we are. I don't know Scotland that well, but they're doing a session on the Highlands and Islands family history on the 17th of June. It's free.
Oh, it's free. That's always.
And they also regularly every month do a session on because they've got a huge maps website there that covers all the great English maps as well that we don't have the copyright for down in England, but they managed to get the copyright up there. So it's the National Library of Scotland is a huge map site, and it also has maps from the clan battles of the Scottish clans and where the armies were and some of the scan battle. It goes back a long, long way, some of the stuff they've got there. But they have very detailed townland maps as well. And they do a session about once a month just explaining what they've got.
Good. Yeah, and Paul mentioned the maps particularly, and
yeah,
and he said some of them are even to the scale of 25 inches to the mile, which will give you incredible detail. I would share screen again, but it seems it takes me so long. But I actually pulled up a map in Scotland, and it's divided into sections. So I pulled up the one it's called Fraserburgh, which is the town up on the north,
right,
in Aberdeenshire. But it includes the area where some of our parks were.
Right.
You can zoom in and you can see Crimond, which is the town that Bill's family was known to be in. It shows Crimonmagate, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the estate there that they now rent out for events, where you said, I think some of your park ancestors may have worked at some point. There also, I zoomed in around, there's a location on there called Parks Croft, which is basically a farm built. Mains of Crimond is there, which I think I've seen show up in some records for our related parks. So it's incredible. The maps are incredible, and they're worth checking out.
The 25-inch to where I live, they've got one of Staley Bridge that's 25-inch. It actually shows the inside of buildings.
Whoa.
Certain churches, you can see the arrangement of the pews within the church. They are really that detailed.
Now that's detail. Yeah. I put up on there, it starts this Tuesday, and if anybody's interested, I've already signed up for it. It's $125, but American Ancestors, which is affiliated with New England Historical Genealogical Society, is doing for 5 Tuesdays in a row a series of courses on researching 17th century English research. And so I'm going to try to learn something there. And again, the beauty of that is if you can't attend them in person, they're recorded and you can watch them later on. And of course, they'll, I'm sure, be syllabi handouts.
Hey, Ken, could you put maybe in the meeting notes or maybe in the notes section of this a link to that American Ancestors course if people want to?
It's on the resource page.
Oh, it is. Good. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. He also talked about Genuki. I had to look how you pronounce that.
I call it Genuki.
Yeah.
Meaning this is the genealogy of the UK and Ireland. But that's I use that all the time. It's a bit similar, a British version of the FamilySearch wiki.
And there's also a new site, and I put a link to that on called genguide.co.uk. And I had that up on a tab, but again, going back to look at this will take forever. But it looks like a very interesting site, and it will point you to resources and collections that you might not be aware of any other way. So that's worth checking out. He also talked about, and I think maybe we've mentioned it before, but the virtual treasury site in Ireland. As you're probably aware, if you do any Irish research, the Treasury building in Dublin was destroyed by fire in 1922, and so many records were lost. But in recent years, there has been an attempt to recreate those records to the extent that it's possible, because many of those records, in addition to being in the Treasury building, were held locally in other locations. So what they have done, and if you go to the site, it's fascinating and fun to play with. They have recreated the actual building virtually, and you can take a virtual tour through it. And they know what records were held in what location in the building. So you can go up to the second floor and see what records are available, and then click on there and access those records. So do check that out. If nothing else, it's just fun. It's called Virtual Treasury, and I've got a link to that on there. And that's another thing that I wanted to share with you. On that site, there's apparently a new source there called Cromwellian Surveys. And I went in there and did a search, and I brought up a record in Armagh of some land transfers. And this is something that we've got to follow up on. And I stumbled on this yesterday, so I've had no chance to follow up on it. But it's a record. The records span from 1641 to early 1703 or something like that. So there's no specific date on that ledger page, but it's a transfer from the Bishop of Armagh. As you know, not only royalty and rich folk got a lot of property in the Ulster settlement, but the church also got a great deal of property. And at some point, this was being divested. There was some sort of act, I can't remember the exact term for it, about 1653 or something like that. So it could be around this time. And that land transfer was to a Symonds Park, Symodns, Parks, an S. So there's in the 1600s, and that is a reference to a Parks in Armagh, much higher than anything that we have seen before. Now, as we know from our other research, when you see somebody with a very unusual given name, very often that's a surname from a previous generation, usually a female ancestral line, mothers or grandmothers. So I did a search.
Yeah.
And yes, there are Symonds and variations of that spelling in Aberdeenshire. And, and there are early references to an archdeacon in Aberdeenshire with the name Simond, as dating back into the 1100s. And I found one marriage much later, 1840 or something like that, of a Jane Parke to a Simond man. They had one son, who they named Alexander Davidson Symonds.
You're joking.
No. So yesterday, I found this yesterday, and I just, so for those of you who may not be familiar, our Parks group is found in County Armagh, and to date, we found him in no other Northern Ireland location. And the DNA, thanks to Bill and others, has led us back to Aberdeenshire.
Yeah.
So the Symonds Parks, whoever he is and whatever else we might be able to find out from him, may be the immigrant ancestor or one of the immigrant ancestors of our Parks family that came from Scotland. And
but our line has Scott Davison in the line.
Yeah, I know. That's why I found it.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, that's why I'm sorry. I'm shocked.
And to add into that, and why this all sort of starts to come together over time, a few issues back in our newsletter, I published part of a long poem that was provided to me by a descendant of one of the Parks families that we're related to, that came from Armagh to Canada and then later into the US. And this was a poem, says, a paper read at the Parks family reunion at Remington, Indiana, August 8th, 1926, was written by Dr. A.L. Parks of Omaha, Nebraska. And in the first part, which is called Our Racial Origins, there's one stanza in there that says, "So the Parkses went to Ireland in 1641, found a home in Armagh, as so many Scotch had done." Now, I thought that was very interesting when I saw it, but I thought, well, where did that date come from?
Yes,
I
Cromwellian.
don't think in 1926 he pulled it off the web or out of thin air. It was obviously something that had been passed down in oral tradition or something. But certainly finding this record yesterday of Simmons Parks in Armagh and all of the other connections that we think might be there, certainly this isn't proof, but it's all circumstantial evidence that adds and is consistent with what we know. So I can't wait to have all of us just start digging into this and seeing what more we can find. And again, this is by researching and going to sources other than, I'm as guilty as anyone of going always to the same 2 or 3 sources. And if it's not there, you sort of give up. And if nothing else, this presentation on both on FamilySearch and on this research in the British Isles opened my eyes to the wealth of other repositories and sources of information that are there just waiting for us to dig into.
Circumstantially, though, they feel like ours, don't they? He feels like he belongs to us, doesn't he, Simmons Park?
Well,
circumstantially, he feels as though he belongs.
Yeah. And whether we will ever be able to trace his line or learn anything more about him, I don't know, because of course there's a huge gap in records, from the early 1800s or so in Ireland, going back until you get into Griffith's evaluation or flax growers lists or things like that. But still, I'm grateful for any tidbit of information we can find like that.
I think Griffith for Armagh, was later. It's 1864.
1860s, yeah.
It started off in 1860.
It took them a good number of years to work their way through Ireland.
To Armagh, yeah. They were one of the last, I think.
Yeah. So that's sort of, my takeaway from the British Isles research. If anybody, thanks, Gay and others for adding into that.
Actually, one thing
sure, Bill.
From what you were talking about on the maps, on Scotland Places, I ordered a map of Crimond, and then I just went and got it, and it kind of, you can order it and get it in the post. And I mean, this is not going to show at all, obviously, but
it's a little blurry from where we are.
This particular map is, Crimond with all the farms. My ancestors in that area were tenant farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And this map happens to be from 1902, but it hadn't changed in quite a few hundred years. Back up in that corner of Scotland, and all the farms are still there on the map. That is, so you can. With my records, because there were Episcopal Church, on the baptism record, it shows where the children were born, and they were born on farms.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can look them all up, so it's quite good.
It sounds excellent because anytime you can put a particular individual in a very specific location, that's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Now, sadly, where all my main ancestors came from is now under an airfield. That was built in the Second World War. So the whole place got absolutely flattened, and then turned into.
King Richard was buried under a car park, right? So
yeah.
Even happened to the great.
but you can see the remains of the farm on the airfield site.
Hmm.
But you can't go there because now it's, even though
You
it's
get run
an
over.
airfield, it's it's kind of one of these radar stations, a very
Yeah.
long range radar. And so it's still Ministry of Defense. But still, there's other maps.
Yeah.
Going back earlier, Scottish places, that's called.
Scottish places.
As
Okay.
opposed to Scotland's people, which is
Ah.
another.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Anything else while we're on this subject? We can always come back at the end, or if somebody.
Yeah, I suppose another thing is, has anyone seen the Parke tartan?
No,
You
that
said you'd
wouldn't.
ordered some of the
I'll try
material.
and get it in focus. But yeah, the Parke tartan. So if you just put in Scottish tartan and go, there's a multitude of sites selling a multitude of products. Some very cheap. Like a coaster, a drinks coaster for a few pounds to a big rug. You can order it up and get a bit of Parke to run in front of you every day. Mm.
Right.
I don't know. I see a kilt in my future.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's more expensive because you have to order a certain meterage of material to make the kilt, and
Yeah.
it's like a minimum of 8 meters because they've got to weave it, especially.
Yeah.
And you're pushing £1,000, so I don't know how many dollars that is, but where a drinks coaster is like £4.20.
I can see you in a kilt though, Ken.
Yes, I was about to say the same thing. I think
I do have one that I've worn, I think, once to a party. But
Is it a Parke kilt though?
No, it's not. See, there's the difference.
Right.
that's the appeal, Ken.
Yeah,
You got to get the Parks tart.
and I'll have to have the whole kit and caboodle. Not just the kilt itself. There was a gentleman who used to come to a lot of the DNA conferences, who has since passed on, but he was quite a character, and he was always in full regalia at the conferences. I couldn't miss him.
My dad was in the Black Watch during the Second World War, Black Watch tartan, and my brother and I had various pairs of winter trousers made out of his kilt.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, they were very, very itchy trousers. I can remember.
But treasures nonetheless to have.
Hey, Bill, if I might, I have a question for you. I don't know how much you know about the tartans, but do you know, are there different ones for different clans or different spellings of the name?
Hundreds of every clan has got its own tartan. They can look very similar, but yeah, there's a different one. So I go in and type in tartan finder and start typing in Parke and they'll all come up. For Parke, there's an ancient tartan and a more modern tartan, and the ancient one has got quite a bit of blue. It's more attractive and probably more relevant to our ancestry. So yeah, just go in and have a look.
Thank you.
Do.
Sounds good.
Does. Thank you.
Anything else? Well, let's move on quickly to the What's New at Ancestry session. It was by Krista Cowan, who some of you may be familiar with from online. She's also known as the Barefoot Genealogist. She gave a very funny explanation of how she came by that title. I won't try to recreate it here because if she tells it anywhere online, it will be much more entertaining than anything I can relate. But she's also sort of the chief genealogist for Ancestry. And there was no handout for this, as she explained. Things are changing so rapidly in terms of what they're adding and doing that anything she puts down in print will quickly be out of date. So some of the things she talked about, though, are something about, well, also, as I pointed out, she has a number of videos on YouTube not on the family, not on the webinar site, but on YouTube. So if you just, and I put a link there, you can find out her talking about various aspects, including various aspects of Ancestry. And she has an introduction to Ancestry Pro tools on there. And it's worth checking out. But the one thing she shared with us at the conference was so new that it's not included in that video. An aspect of the Pro Tools, which I confess I toyed with the idea of adding. It's an added cost to your subscription, but I never went there. But they gave us a coupon for a month's free access, and so I signed up for it. It's an extra $10 a month after that. And there are various tools in this Pro Tools that you can use. I'm not sure how many of those I will take advantage of, but the newest feature that she talked about today, that day, was something called networks. Again, I only have a very small family tree on Ancestry, mainly for linking to my DNA results so people can get an idea. But the network idea is a new thing where you can, on a tree that you control and own, you can add various kinds of networks, and I probably won't be able to explain it as clearly as she could, but they can be trees or people linked to a person in your tree for various reasons. They don't have to be genetically connected to somebody in the tree. For instance, she gave us an example. Her grandfather was in World War II and saw service in Europe, and would never talk about his experiences in the war to his children or to her. In fact, when she would ask him at one point, he would almost get upset and belligerent. Obviously, he didn't want to share or talk about his experience, as many World War II veterans were like that. They kept it to themselves. And so she had a photograph of her grandfather with several other of his, mates in the Army. And she added all of those to a network connected to her grandfather. And she can begin to research those people, and in some cases may be able to find more information that if something in the war, if those people had experiences in the war, chances are it was similar to what her grandfather went through. Another network she added to her parents was there's a photo of their wedding party. The maid of honor and the best man and the groomsmen and the bridesmaids, and she simply added all of them to a network connected to her parents. Later on, I guess some of the people in that wedding party actually did marry into her family, and at that point she could add them genetically or in the family tree, but she could do research on them. You could add, different kinds of networks to people, and so I'm not explaining it nearly as effectively as she can, but I think it's something worth checking out if you have an Ancestry account. It's a monthly charge, so I think, and I may be wrong, I think you can stop that subscription at any time if you don't feel it's working for you or worthwhile. But do go on and check it out. Right now, it's something that's only those trees are private. Though I don't believe you can share them publicly, but it's a good research tool. For instance, I know he's not here today, but John Parke, who lives over in Luxembourg, I know he does a lot of work with Ancestry trees and creates trees for people or family lines, park lines that he thinks might be related. And we can do that. We can have these sort of, excuse me, sort of floating trees, you call them out there. But this is a way to connect them. If you suspect they may connect, you could add them to a network, to somebody in your family tree, and that way it's an easy way to find them. And at some point, if you make or find a connection, then it's a very easy way to merge them. Kim is saying with Ancestry, there's a family plan that you can do and add 4 other folks at the same price. Thank you. So much of this stuff I don't keep up with or follow that closely. So thanks for adding that information. So again, that's about all on the Ancestry that my takeaway with it. And of course, not everybody uses Ancestry, so it may be pertinent to you or not. But if it's of interest, follow some of those links and check some of that out. Finally, the last session we'll talk about today is Judy Russell's. It was Courting Kentucky, the Courts of the Bluegrass State. And even though the talk was about Kentucky courts, much of that information is applicable to other states and indeed to other countries. There are differences in terminology or the way they're set up. But basically, the important point to remember from her was not so much the name of the court, but to focus on the function of each court to guide you to finding the record types that would be in their jurisdiction. For instance, she said, in Kentucky, certainly, and a lot of other places, if you're looking for disputes between individuals, those will be in civil courts. If you're looking for information about a case that disputes about behavior, breaking the law, those would be in criminal courts. If it's a disposition of property, you're going to look for that in the probate courts. Something that would concern community governance would be in a county court, generally. And where it's involving mistakes made by decision makers in other courts, those would be in the appeals courts, right on up to a state Supreme Court or higher. So it's important to look at the jurisdiction of each court in order to tell you if you're looking for a specific kind of record, to make sure you're looking in the right type of court. She also defines some terminology, which we probably are familiar with too, but in terms of a docket, which is basically almost like an index or a table of contents. You're not going to get a lot of specific detail in there, but it will tell you the date of a case, the name of the case or the parties involved, and give you a reference number to a volume and page number where you can find more information. There are the minutes, and in some cases, the minutes books, they're sometimes called order books, and those will have more information, but not a lot of specifics. Again, that will tell you on a certain date, this case came before the court and the parties involved and what action was taken on that date. Now, in some cases, a case may come up and they may simply order witnesses to be deposed or to be called, and the case continues. A lot of times it may come up at a date in the court and one or both parties are not ready to proceed, and you'll see it's simply continued to the next court. And sometimes you'll follow those through for a number of dates where it simply says continue to next court. At a certain point, then you may find a case comes and it reaches a conclusion or some kind of decision, and it will indicate whether one party or the other prevailed, whether the case was dismissed or something like that. Again, it's not always going to tell you a lot of information about the specifics of the case. She indicated that in many cases, if you can find them, there's something called the loose papers, which will give you more of the detail in a court case, affidavits or witness testimony, things like that. And that's where you can get some real information, and it can give you a better idea of what kind of person that ancestor possibly was. She cited some examples. She called it the Fighting Fitzgeralds. I think it was someplace in Kentucky, but it was a number of family members who were involved in multiple cases, both as plaintiffs and defendants. And it sounds like, you really got the impression that these people were maybe a little hard to be neighbors to. They could be cantankerous or disputatious or whatever you want to say, but it gave you a real flavor of what some of those people would be like. And the other thing she pointed out for the value of looking in court records is a number of things. It can tell you, for instance, a particular ancestor, possibly how old they were, or at least give you a better idea of how old they might be if they're referred to as a minor or whatever. Actually, the first morning we were there, I saw Judy sitting down waiting to meet some friends to go on a bourbon tasting tour at something like 10 in the morning. But I had recently come across a document, some court records in Brunswick County. Wilma, we've been talking about this possible ancestor in Brunswick County, but actually it was in Halifax County, and it was the Samuel Parks, we believe, that is in Orange County, North Carolina, that we know is genetically related to us. And it was a case where he was bringing on behalf of his infant daughter, Winfred Parks, against a James Collins, who was a near neighbor. He appears on jury boards and road crews with the Parks. They obviously knew each other. And I asked you, I said, what possible kind of court case would you bring against somebody you know? What could this man have done to an infant that would cause him to take this man to court? And she explained that infant is a technical legal term, said it's anyone under 21. Said she could have been 20 years and 364 days old, and legally she was still referred to as an infant in those court records. So that made so much more sense to me, that there was obviously it could have been a breach of promise of marriage or something like that. Who knows? I mean, she may have been 17, 18 years old or something. So that gave a whole new light, and it's because of her knowledge of the legal terminology and stuff that I don't have. But that puts a whole new spin on that, and of course that was a new name that we were not aware of. So we have to follow up and try to find out more about Winfred Parks. But so that's one aspect of a court case, giving you some information. It might tell you what they did for a living in the course of the testimony. It can also give you names for a fan club. And I think we've discussed fan clubs before. It stands for friends, associates, and neighbors. And we know that researching friends, associates, and neighbors of your ancestor can often give you a great deal of information. Sometimes those people end up being related through blood or marriage. But in any case, they're the kinds of names that you see popping up as a witness to a will, for instance, or a deed transfer or something like that. So, and the other phrase she used, which I love and I have to remember, she says, if nothing else, having an ancestor appear in a court case nails his feet to the ground. It puts that individual in a certain place on a certain date. And when you're dealing with families very often who are migrating from one state to another, and they show up in records years apart, finding something like that, a document, and it could be a court case, it could be a tax list or whatever, it nails their feet to the ground. It puts them in a specific place at a specific time and helps you track their movements and their locations. So the other, going back to the docket, the minutes and newspapers, the other thing she mentioned were the published opinions. Now, not every case ended up with a published opinion, but they were usually appeals, and the case did not have to be necessarily about great matters or large amounts of money or important people, but a judge might want his opinion published because it touched on some law or some aspect of a law that they wanted to set a precedent for. And of course, we know that, you know, appeals courts cases are always, you know, when you're pleading your case, you're looking for a precedent to support your the point of view you're advocating for. And she told us about, and there are links to them here. There's a site called the Case Law Access Project through the Harvard Law Library. It has 40,000 volumes, 7 million cases involved, and I'm not sure if that was referencing just Kentucky or not. But she said the search engine for that site is problematic. She said, to use the technical legal term, it sucks. So she said the alternative, and this is newer, and is a site called courtlistener.com, and the link is there in your resource page. And that covers everything that's in case law. And in some cases, I think for Kentucky, she said it spans every published opinion from pre-statehood, 1793, I think, up until the early 2000s. And the nice thing is that search engine is much more functional. And in cases where the OCR does not give you a clear result by reading the characters, on courtlistener.com, there is also a link to the PDF for the actual court opinion. So you can go and look at it yourself and figure out what's going on. Both sites are free. And she says this courtlistener.com is a game changer. So no guarantee that, you know, there's anything about our particular ancestors in there, but again, it's something worth looking into because you never know what you're going to find. You never know what you're going to find. So I think, according to my notes, that's about all I had to discuss on those four. So again, any questions or comments, or we'll just open it up, talk about anything at all. Wilma?
What was the county where that case that involved Winfred Parks? What county was that?
That was I believe in Halifax County, Virginia.
Okay, thanks, Ken.
Send you a link to it or something about that.
Okay.
I have to dash. Thanks for a great presentation. This was really good.
Thank
But
you.
I have to go. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Ken, that resource page where all the resources are, where is that? I missed where you said you were putting all these.
Oh, I'll send you a link to it.
Right.
It's a Google Doc on our Park Society Google Drive, and I sent it out with a mailing. But and again, I'll put it on in the comments section on the video, but I'll send it directly to you.
Great,
and me, please, Ken. And I still want information as to how to join the society.
I was going to ask you about what the status of that was.
No, I mean nothing. I mean, I did fill all the stuff in online and never got any response. So I wanted to know how to join.
Okay.
I had to fill this query form in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That actually, we're trying to set up a system where I think I'm going to handle ships from overseas, but U.S. and Canada will remain with our registrar.
Right. Okay.
Just, you know, it's on my list.
Well, that's fine. Honestly, I just want to join.
I've got to
because
do
obviously, I've not got the resource.
You'll hear from me soon.
And if I'm hearing from you soon, can you just repeat those Simmons sort of Davison link, please.
Yeah, I'll send that to you too. Yeah.
I've just been looking up the name Simmons.
There are
Um,
variations. Sometimes there's a S, sometimes
oh yes, I know, but what?
there's no D. It derives apparently from Simon, the name.
Yes, it's a patronymic for son of Simon. Yeah, I'm just looking it up. But apparently there was a policeman, John Alexander Parke, born in 1935, who was a policeman who spied for the KGB.
Ooh. Ooh. Yes. Well, he couldn't be related to us.
But it's the Alexander with the Park that got me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Alexander Davidson, yeah.
Well, if you look up
Tim?
Simon Simmons on Wikipedia, you'll find that link.
Okay. And
All right.
Ken, I haven't got around to applying yet, so I will get around to doing it. But I've just got something for Bill. Bill, you recall in your email, you said something about your family. You got a lot of records from the oh God, I can't even think of how to say it. The Episcopalian or something church.
Oh,
I noticed in some marriage record with, I think I found on Scotland's People, they talked about this church there. So it looks like my family were also part of that. But
oh, Episcopal Church, it's called.
yes, that's the one. I couldn't think of it.
Yeah. Yeah, what you might want to do is go on a website called Family Tree, I think it is, or it might be FamilySearch, and somebody has put in an entire transcription of all the members from 1730s way up till 18 something with gaps when nothing happened.
Great.
I've got your email. I can
sometimes those
email you
records
that
are
link.
just missing.
And I remember looking at your family tree, and it does cover that area.
Yeah, but I mean, I think my grandfather, I'm sure he was born Old Deer, Fraserburgh, Strichen and Rathen, and all of these places are, that's from before they went to Aberdeen. I mean, my great-grandfather, I think, or was it my great-great-grandfather, was a tenant farmer on, it was maybe South Tarawati, the farm.
Yeah, I don't know that.
I
But
think
what
he-
I can do, I can point you in the direction of the Episcopal records of births, deaths, and marriages. It is got holes in, but it's very readable because someone's transcribed it from the original writing, and then you'll be able to scan through and maybe pick up family name out of that. I mean, what I did, I went through the whole list and put all the Parks down, and then I could slowly put them into family groups because people were born on the same farm. And then I had a few breakthroughs because I got hold of some graveyard records which showed who was related to who.
Wow.
And then made a tree out of it. So that was, pretty lucky break.
Can I have the
Absolutely,
link
yeah.
too, Bill, please?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I've got your email.
You probably haven't. No.
No.
It's,
I can't write it down right. Have you got a pen?
yes.
My email is ws.park
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
at btinternet.com.
That's easy.
Yeah. Actually, I might have yours because
I'm
when I was
Gay
invited to the meeting, your name was up there.
Yeah.
in the
Gay J Oliver at gmail.com. Yeah.
Okay, right. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I've mentioned it once before, possibly, but in the research that I've been doing in Aberdeenshire weeks ago and haven't gotten back to, but downloading and creating a spreadsheet for births, baptisms, and marriages for Parks.
Oh, you did, yeah. You did.
It's amazing to me that it seems like 3 out of 4 of the males born were named Alexander.
Yes.
And in Armagh and in America, the name Samuel is
Yeah.
extremely ubiquitous.
It's
And there isn't, I don't think, a single Samuel Parke in those records in Aberdeenshire.
really.
Yes, it just surprises me. No end. But that, it is what it is. But it just seemed like, that as frequently as it pops up in America and in Armagh, that it had to have gone back further. But so far, I haven't found.
Didn't we relate to what was he called in Toronto? He died. The chap died not long after he visited him. He went back to a Samuel Parke in Armagh from about 1849, I believe.
Yeah.
And his story of his family being the Orange Men and leaders of the Orange Order, etc., exactly matched my family in Armagh, because there was a Samuel Parke in Armagh that was also the leader of the Orange. I think he was the treasurer for the Orange Order, kind of thing. So those two families did feel as though they
and I believe you and your brother and why am I blanking on his name now? I met him twice up in Toronto, and his sister all are autosomal matches. So your lines have to be pretty close.
They really had to be, really. So, but sadly he died, didn't he?
Yeah, a few years ago. Yeah.
And who is the latest match that's come up with a 1764 date? It was in your email. You'd had a recent match, and I think he dated back to somewhere. Was it in Cumbria in 1764? I've tried to go through the email that you sent, and it's the whole long screed of different parts groups.
Unless it's Bill's line, I can't think offhand, but
right. I thought I can go back to it.
Anybody else got anything today here? Any questions about anything, or?
I've got one question.
Sure.
One comment to make. You were talking about my my line.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed my haplogroup changed from, it was RL 121 or something. Now then it changed to another one, and now it's changed to another one.
I haven't looked at it in the last few days because this trip and all. You have another match who has also done a big Y. That he's deceased, but Malcolm Skiotch or
yeah, Malcolm, yeah.
And his daughter, I've got to try to contact her and get her to put him back in the project. He was in there for some time, and then when he had no matches, she pulled it out for some reason, and so the match is still there, but I can't put it on the website as a match to you. But you both go back to the very early 1700s is your common ancestry there in Aberdeenshire. And what those changes are is once your big Y results came in, the haplogroup probably changed then, and then I haven't again looked. You probably had some private variants, which are mutations that to that date had only appeared in one person, and some of those private variants probably matched him, and that brought it to a new haplogroup more recent in time. And that's the beauty of the Big Y test, because as more matching tests come in at that level, it can change that haplogroup. It's not a static result when you take the Big Y test.
It's all very confusing to me still.
My Heritage have recently changed their ethnicity groups again.
Well,
and what happened was that I'm going back to Vikings and everything with my granddaughter. And she was disappointed when the results came in, because from about 30% Scandinavian, it went down to 13%. So then I looked at the results, and it now gives your roots at different stages of history. So it starts at the Bronze Age, then the Iron Age, then Roman times, then the Dark Ages. And I look back at these, and originally in the Bronze Age, it was standard for all of Europe. But then as it got to the Iron Age and the Roman period, I started looking at it, and did have a big match over Scandinavia. And then I started looking at the genetic, not genetic matches, genetic profiles. And it really high up on the list was a place called Upland in Norway. And the first person I've got back to for her is the King of Upland in Norway. And the deer, even though the ethnicity result went down, the information is almost more accurate, and I've actually got back to a named person in the year 600.
I've never focused too much on all of the ethnicity breakdowns.
No,
They
but
vary
this was good. This was good. This
company
was
and
good.
from time to time, because what they're doing is basing your information or comparing
Yeah.
your information to the other people they have in their database, and that's constantly changing. And what metrics they use to determine all of that, I have no idea. And I've got more than enough on my plate to worry about that it really definitely takes a back seat.
Mitochondrial has changed as well just recently.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because now they can sort of tell you, similar to the big Y, when it gives you a date when your haplotype diverged from the other one, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think the latest time when mine diverged was 1450, and it had me it put me in a group of people, but there's only one person in that group, and now I'm back to 1710, I think, in Belgium, and somewhere between 1440 and 1710, I'm a direct match with this person. But normally, normally there's a group and there's a scattering of a,
and
a cluster, but I'm in a cluster of one, and he won't speak to me.
well, and I would point out, take all of those dates with a large grain of salt. Yeah, they're estimates, and they can change as time goes on. So, yeah,
it's all very interesting, though, isn't it?
It is, but I'd still like to know who my fifth great grandfather is. We're finding out all of this information now in Scotland and Ireland and hundreds of years back, and I still can't connect my third great grandfather definitely to some of those North Carolina or Virginia parks, but we're working on it. But
the problem is with Ireland, if it's going back to Armagh, there's very few records that really help prior to 1800, and that's going to be a problem, isn't it?
Well, if we can get some DNA from this lineage in the Joseph Parks in Virginia, who bought property in 1719, I think we're looking at somebody who was either the immigrant ancestor or second generation. It had to be Armagh, where he came from. It had to be, in that time period.
I don't know anything about him. I'd be interested in his information.
Well, we didn't know anything about him, but
when?
I still want to get some Y-DNA from a known descendant from that line, because until then, there's always that element of doubt. I mean,
so how has he come about on your matches? How recently have you found out about
him? We found that he bought property in 1719 in an area that became Brunswick County, Virginia, which is down on the border with North Carolina. Right. And at some point later on, he received 400 acres, a land patent for 400 acres, not the stuff he bought early. And then in 1747, and he died in 1749. And then later on, I think 1760, I think it was, that same 400 acres was sold by a Samuel Parks of Orange County, North Carolina. And that's the guy that we know we connect to genetically in North Carolina. So he's probably a son. He's not mentioned in his will, but then neither are at least two other sons that we are pretty sure of. So the DNA, we got to get the DNA first. But
right, that sounds promising, doesn't it?
I think we're looking at probably an immigrant ancestor, if not the, and then, now that's this record we've found about Simmons Parks, if that turns out and we could ever prove that, we might be looking at the immigrant ancestor from Scotland to Armagh.
Oh, that would be that would be wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for all your work on this, Ken.
Well, it's just all popping up, and a lot of times the thing is you can go for years, and others you've all seen this. You do a lot of research, and it doesn't seem to get you anywhere. And then all of a sudden you see something that means so much more to you than it would have 5 or 10 years earlier, because you know other things, and it seems to bear on it and start to bring it all together. And so right now it's a lot of pieces out there, but we may be able to bring some of those together and sort of as puzzle pieces and get a better picture of the big picture.
Well, I've been very, very lucky just recently with some Belgian records, because originally they were just in the FamilySearch library and you had to browse through them page by page. And when they're in strange script and in French rather than English, and some of them were in Flemish, it was quite difficult. But they've now, within the last 2 years, all been indexed. And I've found 30 marriages that I didn't have before. So I've got a lot of work to do there as well.
Well, and talking about the the full text search on FamilySearch, of course, that's improving and learning as we go. Right now, I think when it started out, it could, of course, transcribe English records in English, and I think Spanish. I think they're increasing that to include other languages, so that you can, if you found a record at some point in French, or it can it can both transcribe it in French and it can translate it as well, or it will have that ability.
Yeah, I'm not too bad with French. It's Flemish I can't deal with. But
those of us who have no French or no Flemish or anything.
But a friend of mine and one of my associates, they're teaching FamilySearch to transcribe Welsh records at the moment.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, looking around at, many of us are of a certain age, and some of us have been doing this for certainly more than 20 years. And to think of where we are right now compared to when we started out, we're living in probably might be just the cusp of the golden age of genealogy, because the abilities and resources that are becoming available are just, how we did things years ago will seem like the dark ages.
I've still got some records of it. I've still got some records of a genealogist that searched my husband's surname in the 1970s, and he had to physically go round to each individual church, not into an archive. He had to go to individual church and ask to look at the records and extract all the names. So
that's how they did it. Frank Sylvester Parks, who we've mentioned, wrote several books in the 1900s or 20s on mainly New England Park families. Did it just the old-fashioned way. He wrote tons of letters to various Park families all over, and asking them for their particular family history and lineage, and put that all together. And when you think back to how he managed to, just to bring that all together into a publishable form that by and large still holds up today. There are some mistakes in it that have been found along the way, but it's just amazing, and it was an amazing accomplishment back then.
Yeah, well, I initially sent letters to all the parks in Armagh in about 1990. That's how I started.
Ken, speaking from a DNA point of view, do you remember, it wasn't too long ago, a few years ago, you and I were counting STR markers, and decided, when a 67 test came out, a 111, and we tried to match people up with different lineages and splits, and you look back now, and I mean, that was just so.
And that's 20 years.
Yeah.
over 20 years. I took my first test in 2003, a 12 marker test back then. That's all that was available. And my third cousin and I were the only matches we had with each other. Nobody else of any other surname or Parke's name or anything for almost 2 years, because the database was so small. So the fact that now, I'm sitting here talking to Bill over there and George over there and all of you here, and we know so much about your DNA and can connect you to other people. It's just amazing, just amazing. And it's only going to get better.
Well, we're only on the cusp of AI, aren't we, just now?
Oh, yeah.
Just
There was a 2.5 hour session at the end of the last day of the conference on AI. And I went in and I sat in the back for about 10 minutes. And then I started to crash. And because at the end of these conferences, I find my stamina and my concentration is gone. And knowing that it was being recorded, I just went back up and took a nap. And but I will, view that discussion on tape, because there's so many aspects of AI that not just this full text search, so many other aspects of it that are coming into play. And I'd like to know a little bit more about it than I do now, which is next to nothing. So
Ken, are you
I've got to go. So cheerio till the next time.
Yes. Thanks for coming.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, Bill.
Who was I hearing from?
Do you plan to go to Fort Wayne next year?
Is that another FGS or?
That their FGS and NGS are combined.
Oh,
so it's
okay.
NGS only. Yeah.
I don't know, but we can talk about it.
Yeah. I think we'll be there.
This was the first genealogy conference I'd been to since I think
Since
you and I were in Fort Wayne, and you said that was 2015?
18. It was 2018. Yeah.
Other than some DNA conferences in between, which only focus on DNA, and you can attend them virtually, and at some point, that might be an option if I want to. But I found certainly that attending in person, the interactions of meeting people in between sessions and at lunch and so forth can sometimes be as valuable as what you get out of the sessions. I felt like a kid in a candy store, or that I didn't really belong. But one night I went to dinner. There was a big round table of about eight of us, I think. I was sitting between Judy Russell and Angie Bush, who is a DNA expert. She was installed as a fellow at NGS at this. Blaine Bettinger was there, who is a big DNA and AI expert. Two other Facebook friends that I'd never met, a forensic genealogist who does this professionally for working for law firms and things. And I felt like the least educated person at the table. There were, I think, at least 4 or 5 attorneys, as well as, CGs and other credentials. I have no postnomials to follow my name, but that was a great, experience. And we're picking up at least one Parke Society member too. I was at a presentation / lunch, and I sat at another big round table with the speaker, Ryan Woods, who's the head of the New England Historical Society up in Boston. But there was a fellow next to me, and he was speaking on the Revolutionary War. It was the topic. But this was at lunch before the talk, and we were also talking about the Civil War. And I mentioned something about how more soldiers died of disease than were killed in battle. And at some point, this fellow next to me chimed up and some aspect of it and said, "Well, I'm a physician, retired." And so we chatted a bit and I learned something about him. And then I saw him after another session, went over and sat. And as we were talking, he said, "I think I have Parkes in my Ancestry." And he got his phone out and it's like trying to scroll through his family tree on an iPhone. And he turns out he gave me the names of a female Parkes and her parents in the 1700s, Stonington, Connecticut. Of course, we thought, okay,
Yeah.
Robert of Massachusetts. I went upstairs, got into our database, our given name, couldn't find his ancestors. But online, I found an ancestry tree that included them and went back a couple of other generations, but stopped. But those people, those earlier generations were in our given name index. So I could make that connection, sent that all to him, and he was amazed, first of all, that we could find that in just a few minutes. And so he's applying for membership, and I'll reach out to his third cousin, who's also a researcher. And there was an African American attendee there, Edwina Parks, who I could never make contact with. We tried to do a meetup on that Hoover, but we kept, like ships passing in the night. But I will follow up with her, and she's a researcher and a genealogist who works at the African American History Museum in Washington, D.C., and travels extensively doing presentations for them. And her parks came from Iredell County in North Carolina. So I'd like to follow up with that and get her into the Park Society. And that's one of the things I have to address with you, Susan, and Tad, and some of the others. I think we need to remove the references that we've always had about the Park Society for descendants with roots in the British Isles, because I think we need to be more inclusive, because obviously there are African Americans who do not have roots in the British Isles, and we would like to have them as members as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. That
So,
sounds like a great, Ryan Woods. I don't know if you knew this, Ken, but I'm a counselor for the New England Historical Genealogical Society, American Ancestors. So I actually just saw Ryan not all that long ago.
yeah.
So,
And the first day we were there, I went with a group. They took a little bus tour over to the Filson Historical Society there in Louisville, and they split. There were about 40 something of us, split us into 3 different groups that were more manageable, and they had 3 different sort of stations or presentations, and they rotated us through those. But there was a woman in there. I think I thought I wrote her name down. But at any rate, she's from Miami. She's head of the Greater Miami, and she had been at your talk that you
good.
and is friends with Magali Park. So, so again,
It's actually, it was great to sort of have that contact with Greater Miami and just, again, I think it's reinforcement that groups all, whether they're in the Park Society or in another, everybody has very similar goals for, figuring out best practices, or even just trying to figure out how to go back into really historical records. I mean, I think those conversations are, consistent along all these different groups. It was, it was a great opportunity to talk to them, and hopefully, if we haven't encountered all the parks there, hopefully they go, oh, the Park Society, because we did mention it during the talk. So
yeah, no, it's a small world when you get into these genealogy conferences and things, and it doesn't take long to make connections with other people.
yeah, as it turns out, I just
Find cousins.
I just signed up to do just to tell you all, I'm going to get my professional genealogist certification. So that will
Wow.
be coming. And I'm
More
and
power
I'm
to you. I tried years ago and just couldn't quite get it finished.
well, I'm doing it because I really want to understand DNA. And this is my opportunity to make myself really, because I do feel that that's going to help through so many sort of brick walls. To me, that is the direction we all need to sort of have better understanding of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I even found a cousin after the fact at that conference. I posted a picture while waiting for the elevator on the 21st floor of the hotel of the Ohio River. And later, this morning, an actor friend from years ago in Florida said, oh, I have a friend who was at that, Irma Hale. And I had just stopped on the way to Louisville to meet a third cousin, Tim Hale, in southern Ohio, and give him a muzzle loader that belonged to our common great-grandfather, James Hale, because I thought it should go back into the Hale family. And so I looked up her line, and our common ancestor is back in the late 1600s, early 1700s. We're probably 8th or 9th cousins.
Wow.
So I'll reach out to her. So, and it, you know, I think I mentioned it, but we're exploring the reason this cousin that I met is taking a test, and some others, because we had a Hale who was an 8th cousin of mine turn up as a genetic match Y-DNA to my Parke's DNA.
Oh,
And we're trying to figure out when that happened and where. And it's looking like it's back in the very early 1700s, at least, in that area of Virginia up by the Chesapeake Bay.
wow.
Can I say that I attended a genealogy conference in New England for the New England Genealogical Society in 2006? And the thing I liked best was there were more Irish exhibitors there than there ever are in English conferences.
Mm.
So
there's
that's
a little
yeah.
antipathy between the two going on.
No, it's just that there are so many Irish in America that
True.
emigrated.
That's
so
true.
There was more. So yeah, there must have been about 8 different organizations from Ireland there. And I listened to that eccentric genealogist, Gary Boyd Roberts.
Oh, yeah.
He was very interesting to listen
Yeah.
to. Very eccentric. Thank you, everybody.
Well, anybody else got questions or comments? Or well, thank you all for coming. I hope some of what we posted here or talked about today will be of interest and of use to you. I would urge you to check out some of these links that you think might be of interest, because as I'm learning, just beginning to learn, there's so much more out there available than we really realize, I think. So, and let's come back, a few months later or weeks later with some success stories.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Ken.
Okay, well,
Thanks, Ken.
we'll
Cheers.
see you all next month, and we'll be in
Enjoy the rest
touch.
of your day.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.